after the 4-year-long struggle and 3 movies that we could have probably very well done without, we finally got it. We finally got a really good DC Extended Universe movie. Wonder Woman just came out. I have to say it was a huge surprise. I mean, at this point we were getting to a point where we'd be going into a DC movie and we'd sit down and we're just waiting to see if this is the good one. And our expectations were starting to get more and more low. But this isn't one of those movies where the bar is set so low that topping it is that easy. No, they actually go beyond that and make a very, very, very good movie. This is right up there with the likes of what Marvel's been doing, what 20th Century Fox did with Deadpool and Logan, what all kinds of other movies have been doing. It's a good summer blockbuster movie. The story is pretty simple. It's Diana Prince. She comes from an island of Amazonian women, and Chris Pine runs into her and tags along to go fight in the war. And then that's what happens. And it's kind of nice to have a movie that doesn't have all these extra plot contrivances, all these extra things going on. Instead, this movie becomes very much a character piece, which is exactly what the DC Universe needed. When you're doing an origin film like this, you have to focus on the character. You can't try to start expelling exposition and trying to set up all these other movies. Instead, you have to focus on what the movie is supposed to be about, the main character. And I have to say, Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot playing her is excellent. It is an excellent character, and it was actually just sort of surprising. The main character sometimes will end up being boring, and you know, something like Wonder Woman is very similar to something like Superman, or Captain America, where the character is just so good and so right that they end up doing nothing wrong, and their character might end up becoming a little boring. However, in this case, Wonder Woman is actually very interesting. They add just a lot of great humor to her. They add a lot of great just development throughout the entire movie. She goes from the safety of her home and enters into a world where she can't imagine the atrocities that are happening before her. She's just an overall great, good person who can't understand why people would do things that are so bad. Chris Pine is also just a great secondary character. In fact, his entire crew that they go along with, there's like 3 other characters. They're all pretty great too. I guess I would have wished to have seen a little more from all of them, and even the secretary of Chris Pine's who shows up, I really wish there would have been a little more with her, but you know, we get enough of them. We get enough to understand why they're there. There's not too many characters either, so the very few characters they give us, they're memorable. It's also really weird to see a movie like a superhero movie where 2 of the best scenes were the quietest scenes in the movie. There's the scene where Chris Pine, whose character's name is Stephen Trevor, I keep calling him Chris Pine though, but it's Stephen Trevor and it's Wonder Woman, and they're sitting on a boat and they're just talking, and there's a lot of humor in this scene and everything, but I just thought it was a really nice scene. In this movie, they actually take some time to have some character interaction between the 2, and it really develops their relationship. The other best scene in the movie is right after she crosses the no man's land, which is also just a great action sequence, but it's right after that when they're dancing and the snow falls and there's a guy in the house that's playing the piano, and it was just a really great scene. We don't really see that a lot in superhero movies, and we especially don't see that in a DC movie. Overall, really well balanced. There's great action sequences, and then there's just moments for us to rest, for God's sake. I also really like that they just kind of went through the phases of her being a child to a teenager to an adult. Because we've seen this story before, and I think the writer maybe knew that too. The writer and the director probably knew, you know, we're telling, the beginning of this story has been told, so maybe we should just kind of give the basics of what's needed, get that over with, and get to the parts that people really want to see. And that's what I mean, the movie just keeps it going, keeps the movie going. Okay, but I will say that I kind of was hoping for a couple more action sequences, but that's not really a problem with the movie, that's just my personal preference. I also have just a nitpick about the different languages that are spoken in this movie. So you have this character who can speak many different languages, and he even gets kind of into a quarrel with Wonder Woman about who can speak more languages, because Wonder Woman can speak all languages as well. But then they're cut into scenes with the Germans, and they're cut into scenes where Chris Pine literally needs to sneak into the headquarters by speaking German, but instead of doing a German language, they just do German accents and speak the whole thing in English. I know it was just a creative choice, but it just seemed a little weird that we had characters whose main purpose was to speak other languages, and instead of doing subtitles, we literally just had them speak English. It was just a weird choice, in my opinion. The effects were great. They weren't cartoony, they were exactly what they were supposed to be, and the overall look of the movie is good. At times, I thought it was still a little too dark, you know, like, maybe they could have, I don't know, I guess that's just a DC thing. I guess they're gonna just have their movies be a little more darker, and with, desaturated colors, but you know, that's a creative choice, and they have to distinguish themselves from the rest of the movie universes that exist. And the music was really good, you know, it's kind of a traditional superhero, even movie blockbuster score with the oh, and it's the really epic music, but it really is that theme that makes it stand out from the crowd, because we don't really get a theme for superhero movies anymore. I mean, sure, I think the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy kind of have good themes, but this one is so distinct that, you know, it's distinct. I really like that. The only real problem I have with this movie, and this is kind of a spoiler, I'll try to avoid this being a spoiler, but it has to do with the villain. And there wasn't really a villain throughout most of the movie. There was just these two really cartoony bad guys, who I was absolutely fine with. I'm sure they're in the comics, I'm sure some people will debate about them, you know, but I for one thought they were fine. I thought they were cartoony. There's a scene where he throws a bomb into this room, shuts the door to make sure none of the people he's killing can escape, and while he's doing that, he says something to his pal, and they just start laughing, like the most ridiculous villain laugh I've ever seen. Just ha ha, and I'm like, wow, that was amazing. I mean, I don't have a complaint about it. I thought it was great. I thought it was great to have really cartoony villains in this movie. But it's not really that villain that I have a problem with. Now, the entire movie, and if you look at the backstory at the beginning of the movie, it's basically Wonder Woman going after Ares, the god of Ares. And the movie sets up Ares as being the villain because she's going after him. No one believes that he even exists. They all think it's just in Wonder Woman's head. But she basically places Ares in the role of being the bad guy who's influencing this war and who influences people to do bad. When she goes and kills the guy that she thinks is Ares, nothing happens. Instead, everyone continues doing, the people who are on, you know, the bad side, the Germans, keep doing what they're doing. She has a conversation with Chris Pine about it, and she's just confused, and she doesn't understand what's going on. She thought everything would be fixed, and then he tries to explain things the best way he can, because in the movie about war, and in war in general, it's just hard to explain who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and Chris Pine does a really good job of explaining this, and Gal Gadot really, you know, she does a great job of just being like absolutely startled by what's going on. I thought that was great. I really liked where this movie was going with that idea that Ares doesn't really exist, but it's just something that represents all, you know, people who just do bad things just for the sake of doing bad, or maybe they don't even realize they're doing bad things. They in fact do bring Ares into it. It ends up being revealed that a character from earlier in the movie is actually Ares, and that Ares actually is influencing people. And then they have the big, really, you know, bombastic DC Universe fight. I mean, this reminded me of Batman v Superman. This fight really isn't that good. It just kind of was really, I mean, it's funny that the movie built it up to this moment, but when it happens, it still feels out of nowhere. They were going to make this big statement about war and about who's really on the good side. I was really liking where they were going with this, and how war is just difficult, and that there really isn't just one bad entity. But then they actually had scenes of him influencing the bad guys to do the bad things, and I'm like... However, that doesn't really ruin the movie. I don't know, I really liked the final scene in the movie. I really liked everything else about the climax besides that fight, and besides... And I also didn't like that the one guy who's supposedly a really good shooter, he's a really good sniper. There's not really a payoff for his character because he doesn't shoot once in the movie. They kind of explain why he hasn't been able to take any shots throughout the whole movie, and then there's no payoff. So that was a little weird. Everything else, the humor was good, the balance was good, the plot was really interesting. It kept it moving. All the characters were just perfect in their roles, I thought. I think overall everyone can say that this is the best DC movie in this DC extended universe anyway. This is the best female-centric superhero movie because what? I think I have Elektra up here. Somewhere up there I have Elektra. It's better than that. I just think, yeah, it took way too long for a female superhero movie to come out. I'm finally glad it happened. I'm glad it was great. I'm glad that so many people have been enjoying it so far. I really hope this movie makes a ton of money, and I really hope DC sees all of that and they see what this movie did right and then just kind of emulates that. The best way, I guess, for DC to continue doing these kind of movies is for everyone to go see this movie. Everyone should go see this movie. It's a great time. Kids are gonna love it. I think it's a lot of fun. So I will give it an 8 out of 10 for, yeah, great summer blockbuster, great superhero movie. This is a great year in superhero movies so far with Logan and Guardians of the Galaxy. I still have to see Captain Underpants. So we'll probably be throwing that up there with some of the best also. So, this is Justin from Cinephile Studios. See you next time.